So I'm down on the absolutely stunning Oyster Cove, Saltern Cove and Armchair Cove this evening to record a last minute intro to our next round of lockdown interviews, which we finally managed to get back around to, having put them on pause for a month or so as we eased out of lockdown. So yeah, we've tried to put a bit more context in with them, which I'll go through in this intro. But they're three artists who are exhibiting with us in the design room, which closes at the end of this week. It was a really lovely show that closed during lockdown, and we've been really pleased to reopen, so that it actually gets to see some audiences as we start to try and return to a bit more of a normal. We've got a few more to do after this as well, but we wanted to focus on getting these printmakers in so that you can see them in the context of the exhibition. So to tell you a bit more about them, this intro is going to be at the front of 3 different videos, so if you've already watched one, this is the same intro, just skip through it. But our 3 artists, the first one is Georgina Fay. She's a printmaker based in London, and we sort of started talking about by comparing our experiences in different locations, the difference between here and London, and how that impacts. We talked a little bit more about the fact that she's currently locked out of her studio. She was locked out of her studio at the time, and how that's impacting her work. And the 10 by 10 project that she was running at the time. She's now back into her studio. Her education role is still quite limited because they're having to protect the young people they'd normally work with. So that's still taking place online, as it was during our conversation. So yeah, some elements still not quite back to normal for her, as they would be for lots of other people as well. Our second artist is Simon Ripley. He's a printmaker based in Devon and works with Double Elephant over in Exeter. We had a really nice conversation, talked a lot about looking down with family and how important that is. And also about a really exciting commission he won for Exeter's hyperlocal commissioning and the work they did for that, which was during lockdown. And then he also recommended a really interesting book called How to Do Nothing. So yeah, I've spoken to Simon yesterday, and Double Elephant is slowly reopening. There are a lot of online printmaking workshops that they've now got live, and members can take bookings there. And Simon's also excitedly prepping for Devon Open Studios, which is currently planning to go ahead. And our final of the 3 artists is Warren Claiborne, also based in Devon. We talked. We started off our conversation in a very British way, talking about the weather and gardening, and then we moved on to the fact that he's just returned from travelling for a long period of time, and we talked about the transition from globetrotting into a full lockdown, and how that's affected him. He then talked a little bit about his work and how that has changed without the pressure of exhibiting, how he's freer to do a bit more experimentation, and it's quite an enjoyable experience for him, which is really interesting. And then he shared some amazing Zoom tips, which we were completely blown away by. Some really good ideas for how to use Zoom, which hopefully we're all trying to avoid now, but still interesting, really interesting. They're still being really cautious, which I think a lot of us are, and I think that's really, really important to be. But what he is doing is he's enjoying a little summer break with a change of scenery, where they've arranged a very safe house swap with some friends of theirs. So that's what Warren's doing in terms of his getting some new scenery to inspire his creative practice. So those are the 3 interviews that are going to come up. Like I say, the design room's closing pretty soon, but we've got a lot of exhibitions still to come, and a few more interviews as well. So yeah, hope you enjoy this video.
I suppose I spent the first probably 2-3 weeks thinking a bit like I was on holiday and really not doing anything, doing a lot of gardening, doing DIY jobs, and really not settling to anything. I'm hoping that Devon Open Studios will happen in September. So all the time at the back of my mind was that I was thinking, God, this is a perfect time for me to be making work and preparing myself for Devon Open Studios and other exhibitions and so on. But in fact, I've done really nothing. I've done nothing creatively with my own work.
Mm.
I'm a director of Double Elephant Print Workshop, so most of my sort of creative focus has been on maintaining contact with Double Elephant and trying to think of online content for Double Elephant. And it wasn't until last week that I started doing anything creative, in actual fact, in terms of making print works or making work. And I made 3 videos last week on how to print without press. So it's been a strange experience, really. I kind of love it in some ways, and in other ways I hate it.
I imagine there's a lot of people who will empathise with the holiday aspect of that in particular. It was a really unusual feeling at the start. I think there was sort of that mixed, I guess, a degree of anxiety in what was going on around us, but it was difficult not to relax when everyone's being told to.
Well, I think also there was a lot of uncertainty financially. You know, I had a lot of work that just almost overnight was cancelled. You know, a lot of work in schools. I had work planned in hospital settings. I've had work planned with mental health charities, and also with Double Elephant classes that were happening. And, you know, overnight, the Phoenix, which was our base in Exeter, closed, and all the work was cancelled. So that first period of time was spent thinking, my goodness, how am I going to cope financially? You know, what's going to happen?
Has that sort of side of it stabilised for you a bit more now? Are you?
I've been fortunate in that I've managed to get an Arts Council individual grant, which is great. Of course, the freelance support has been clarified by the government. I'm not sure when that will arrive.
In terms of your work at Double Elephant, then you're able to carry on planning to a degree there.
Yes, to a degree. I mean, we've changed our website, so we put on an online content, but all of our classes have been cancelled, of course. We do a lot of work with adults with mental health problems, and we really wanted to continue that. So we weren't just leaving people in the lurch, because we appreciate that mental health issues are going to become worse, not in any way better.
Absolutely.
And so many of the grants that funded that have been put on hold. But we have managed to maintain a bit of online content, and from this week or next week, we'll resume kind of on an individual basis. We'll resume some classes, perhaps through Zoom or working one-to-one with people to maintain some creative input for them.
Potentially an interim step there appearing in the not too distant future.
You know, I think we've got to put something in place, because I think it's going to be a long time before we can resume normal service. So we want to try and establish, you know, a way of reaching all of the participants that use the workshop.
Absolutely, it's sort of a vital time to start learning, isn't it? Because I think it's not going to be normal for quite some time.
No, and I think we realise that there's a lot more besides just straightforwardly learning an art form. The social aspect of everything that we do in the workshop is really as important, if not more important, for many, many people. And the thing that has been maintained is that interaction between people. So we run every Wednesday for members of the workshop, just a sort of check-in Zoom meeting where you can come along, hear what other people are doing, see other faces. Even if you're not doing anything creatively yourself, you're just maintaining social contact.
And I think that's always been such an important part of any creative gathering or collective of artists. It is that social side as much as the practical side. So being able to maintain those must be really. It's
kind of ironic, you know. You spend years trying to persuade funders that there's some social value or some benefit for individuals in practicing art. You can put forward any kinds of arguments, and people will give you statements saying, "Oh, I had a really good time. I really loved it." Got to quantify, and it takes something like this, where you absolutely realise crystal clear that the social benefits of engaging with a creative activity are just enormous.
There is such a strong position now to get that evidence and really showcase the well-being impacts of creative practice and how it is a very supportive element for communities. You were saying a bit then about your own practice just before that, and it's been on pause for a little bit, but you're sort of coming back somewhat now.
Yes, but I'm at home with my partner and my two daughters, and we applied for an Exeter Arts and Culture commission.
Okay.
It's called Hyperlocal, which we were successful in getting that. I think they had over 230 applicants. We made a 3-4 minute film based around the making of a dinner guest. It was something that we'd done before in the past when the children were much younger, where we made a kind of mannequin, a kind of person who lived in our house for months and months and months.
Yeah.
So our film is called Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, and we made a person because no one could come and visit us. We were fed up with our own company. So we make this person, and then she comes to dinner, and we all eat together. But it was fantastic to do it. And I think it really lifted us, actually, as a family, and made us all come together. And as a result of that, it's encouraged me to go in and make more films myself. So this week past, I've made 3 films in my studio, just different printmaking processes, which we'll put on the Double Elephant website to encourage people.
And those you were saying, I think those are all done. It's printing without a printing press, so it's sort of a something that is quite approachable at the moment. Where I think even if you're not a printmaker, for lots of artists, they're finding themselves restricted from accessing their studios if they're off-site. So those sort of practical side of things again, of how do you carry on your practice if you don't have the tools or the equipment in isolation with you.
Yes, I mean, that's especially key for printmakers because it's generally a studio activity. We rely on the machinery, but you can do a heck of a lot with just your resources at home.
Outside of that, then, it sounds like you're getting quite a lot of family time as well, potentially. But what other aspects of your, have you gained a lot of free time in lockdown, or are you busier than ever? How are you finding that side of things?
Yeah, a lot of family time, and sometimes too much family time.
Yeah.
But my daughter introduced me to this book here, How to Do Nothing. It's not specific to this situation, but it's subtitled Resisting the Attention Economy. So it's really about the situation that we're in, particularly if you're a digital native, where your entire life is taken up by checking your phone, looking on Instagram, posting on Facebook. And it talks about ways of avoiding that, of getting beyond that. So for somebody like me, it's kind of saying things that we know are obvious, that we shouldn't be spending all our time posting on Instagram. There are other things which open your eyes to what's around you, but it's a really useful reminder about that. My daughter, she's cancelled her Instagram account and she's switched her phone to display only in black and white, as a way of kind of minimizing that disruption. But the other thing that we've done is I go every day on a dog walk, and we've started to identify and name wildflowers in the hedgerows, which is so rewarding. It's such a lovely thing to do.
Yeah.
Because not only do you build up the knowledge of the names of the wildflowers, but of course it teaches you to look, in the same way that going to life drawing class teaches you to look.
Yeah.
You open your eyes to what's in the hedgerows, why you might get one type of flower for a period of time and then that flower disappears and you get a different one, how common some are, then trying to identify sometimes how difficult it is to identify them.
Yeah.
And it's just all about slowing down, using your eyes, just becoming much more aware. That has been a really lovely thing that we've all learned here in our family.
It sounds really rewarding. I think that is a real element, isn't it? Because everyone is sort of being encouraged to almost exist in a very immediate and perhaps quite small environment, even outside of the isolation of your own home. There's that encouragement to sort of stay local, stay within the gardens and local green spaces or local city environment that's near you. So we're hopefully all getting if you're someone who is out regularly, dog walks, whatever, you are getting this very intimate knowledge of a space that you probably experience quite regularly anyway, but it's now being enhanced.
Yes, very much enhanced, because I do that dog walk most of the time now with more open eyes, really. And I guess that's partly because I'm not going off to work and I'm not busy as I am normally. But I would really recommend that book to anyone, really. just as a way of kind of preempting, hopefully, some of the benefits that will come out of this whole experience.
There's been this running joke, I think, that artists themselves are quite isolated anyway. Is that something that you'd found before this? Were you a reclusive artist, or
in the past I've had jobs and I've quit those jobs thinking, well, I'm going to spend more time in my studio, and it never works for me. I've become accustomed now to the reality that I have to have a balance being in my studio doing the other work, and really the inspiration for my own work comes absolutely from the participatory teaching work that I do. Interacting with others is what stimulates me creatively for myself. So actually, I think that's probably why I've done none of my own work during this time, just because having that expanse of emptiness, that kind of, that's so unusual for me. I don't normally self-isolate. Yeah, that joke doesn't really apply to me. The other thing for me is that I have to have, a deadline really helps me.
I don't suppose you want to take this opportunity to say any more about what's going on at Double Elephant at the moment at all, if there's anything else you want to add to what you mentioned earlier.
Well, we're planning a project based around the Exeter book. The Exeter book is probably quite a rather little known but incredible document, and it's written in medieval English. I've not seen the book itself because it only comes out on special days, but I've seen a facsimile of it. It's quite an unprepossessing book of text with no pictures, but it's a major document historically, and also it's enabled Exeter in part to be awarded a City of Culture, Heritage City of Culture, and so we're about to do a printmaking project, a printmaking and animation project based around riddles in the Exeter book, because the book contains a number of riddles. So that's something we're about to embark on, probably online, a remote version of that. We may not be able to do any one-to-one classes individually. So yeah, all of that information will be coming up on our website. And there is already quite a lot of information on our website about different types of approaches to printmaking without a press, my own videos included.
Another thing is, it's nice to be able to, to have that planning phase where you're seeing that anticipation of a project now, isn't it? A project that is being planned at this time when we can't be as active with the work we want to do. The knowledge that is going to come down the line, I think, will be very rewarding at the point when we are able to see some things that are happening now come to fruition.
We're impatient to crack on with it now.
You mentioned a little bit about when the start of this, there was an initial financial anxiety for you. Obviously there would have been for a lot of people. Outside of that, would you say that you've found this a particularly stressful experience? And many people will be feeling that way, I think, from a well-being point of view. But
I think I'm very, very lucky. I live in Crediton. There's fantastic walks just from my doorstep. I'm here with my family. I've got 3 daughters, and one of my daughters is in Harrogate, so she's far away, and we do miss her. But the rest of my family are here with me. Really, we want for nothing. And in fact, now we've just got more time together, which has been really rewarding. At times I felt like I can't be bothered to get out of bed, which is not like me. And I do feel frustrated by it, but really I compared to many people, I got nothing to complain about. And I think it's more than anything, it's been a period of time for incredible ability to reflect and live a life that's relatively stress-free for me. I wouldn't say that work is terribly stressful for me, but that open-endedness of time has been really rewarding in some ways.
Perhaps a tendency to be even now to be quite sort of harsh on ourselves and applying almost very abstract pressures sometimes, because there's a lack of the normal 9 till 5 or deadlines, like you were saying. Definitely being able to just reflect and I don't know, be accepting of the situation we find ourselves in is really important.
It's the lack of structure that I think is the most difficult thing for me.
Yeah.
That's why I do every morning I take the dog out, and I'm looking at wildflowers, and I do a bit of admin, or I might have a Zoom meeting, and then it's about building a bit of structure into your day so that it doesn't seem an open-ended waste of time.
Yeah. We're very used to having sort of certain elements of our routine imposed upon us from external factors, whereas now all of that control comes back to us.
Maybe the joke about the artist self-isolating to an extent is true, in that I've become very used as a freelance artist to just managing my own time. I've got used to it now, so I don't think, every piece of work is going to be my last piece of work. I'm used to things just coming, and nothing stays the same ever. You might think, I'm in a terrible state, I've got no work, but things change all the time. So I suppose that is the advantage of being a freelancer, and the advantage of being an artist, really, that you have to become accustomed to the uncertainty.
Yes. Yeah. Maybe that is one thing that has prepared creators for this a little bit, is that uncertainty is a factor that many artists will have been living with anyway, like you say. So it's ability to adapt comes naturally. So you were saying that you've recently then managed to go back to your own practice a little bit more. Has that been a positive experience? I'd hope to be able to go to that, or has it felt like work? Or
it does feel like work, and I would do my utmost to avoid it. I haven't gone back to making my own work. I've gone back to making these videos, these short films. I think probably the point will come where I can't put it off any longer, and I'll have to make some of my own work. But I haven't reached that point yet. I think I'm much better at making work when I've only got a really short time to do it, and I feel pressurized. So that point hasn't come yet.
I see. So potentially there's lack of external factors, like we were saying, is that. Yeah.
It'll be the last week of lockdown.
I imagine there'll be a lot of people like that, where it'll be almost the last week of the holiday sort of thing, and everyone will be trying to cram as much in as possible into those last days. You talked a little bit about the social side of the workshops that you're still managing to carry on with the Wednesday Zoom calls. Are there any other ways that you're staying connected, either bit for working purposes or for your own personal purposes?
My dad, who is 95, has finally been able to master Zoom. Amazing. So we did yesterday. We had a family Zoom meeting, but everyone just talks over everybody else. That's the problem. But apart from that, I've got some work which is ongoing in Chard in Somerset.
Okay.
There's a mental health support group that happens there, which just before lockdown started, I was about to start a project there, making banners, printmaking and making banners with that group. And I've kept the connection with them. So every Thursday they have a group Zoom meeting, and I bring in a sort of artistic input to that for an hour, half an hour. So that's been carrying on. And really, apart from that, meeting with colleagues from Double Elephant has been about as sociable as it gets.
Yeah.
I'm part of a small film club. We do online. We watch a film and then we discuss it. What else do I do? Not that. No, that's about it.
I think there'll be again a lot of people have been trying to getting older relatives onto technology has become a challenging pastime as well.
Yeah, I've told my daughters when I'm 95, they've really got to keep me in touch with the technology and not let me fall behind.
Yeah, it's something we've not had much success with yet with some elderly relatives of ours, where they're not quite hooked up with us on Zoom calls yet. But who knows? Maybe by the end of this, we'll have found a way to.
One of the nicest things, actually, I've got small nieces. We made our film about this Guess Who's Coming to Dinner.
Yes.
And then they have made their equivalent with their dolls and dressing up characters in their families and making little films, and we've shared those around the family, which has been very nice to do.
Fantastic. It's everyone is kind of remembering to use the technology at our fingertips a bit more creatively at this time, aren't we? Rather than it being sort of the default of texting or messaging or whatever it might be. There's more time, I think, to look at those tools that we've used quite passively day to day in a more active way. And
yeah, I mean, I think in terms of making these films is the most creative thing I've done, and I'm amazed at what good quality of film you can get just from an iPhone.
Yeah.
And also you can edit on iMovie on your phone incredibly easily. So it's a fantastic tool, particularly when we're so dependent on online content.
Absolutely.
In many ways that's a much more creative tool to use than old-fashioned printmaking and making sort of static pictures.
Yeah.
I might just move into that.
Do you think is your printmaking? I should say for context that we're probably having this conversation in part because you were one of the printmakers who was taking part in the design room with us, which unfortunately had to close after just 3 days of launching because of all this. But your own printmaking and the methods you use, would you say then they're quite very traditional methods, or?
Yes, in fact, I use an 1850s printing press to make them. This enormous heavy-duty cast iron printing press that I have in a shed in my back garden. The method that way of making almost doesn't exist in a vacuum somehow. It doesn't exist when you're just at home doing it for yourself.
Yes.
And maybe that's one of the reasons why I haven't particularly made any of my own work. That without some context of conversation where you're talking with other printmakers, you're in a studio context, you're thinking about exhibiting. Without those in place, it almost ceases to exist somehow. It's very difficult to just make things into a vacuum.
Do you see there being something that that out of this potentially replaces that for you? Those, if a lot of your creativity perhaps in the past has been linked to external interactions, do you see anything coming in to replace that? Maybe you've been talking about the wildflower walks and your family situation. Is that something that could maybe in the future, maybe after we've come through this, perhaps becomes more of a source?
I would like that. I think it might well do. I anticipate that I will return to life more or less as it was, where I'm engaging with people much more. But I think I've learned lots of new skills in terms of filming and editing that I would never have bothered with, I don't think. So I hope that I'll continue to take film and develop it in that way with the groups that I work with when I'm back to normal.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's probably going to be something that is as much a necessity as well. I think those audiences are going to look very different. So it's probably going to be something which is just a general consideration for lots of people, I think. Yeah. So just to finish off a slightly lighter note, we're wrapping up every interview asking what's on your COVID-19 playlist. What are you listening to in lockdown? I imagine in a family household that could be quite a varied answer, perhaps.
Very varied answer. With two daughters who are, what are they, 17 and 24, we have music on all the time. Just a very varied and eclectic mix of things, really.
Do you get much say in the sort of communal areas?
Very much so. We all have our own favourite playlists. I'm a big fan of Six Music, so I listen to that a lot.
The role of the broadcaster has been a big influence in these conversations. Actually, talking about how the strength of radio as a media during this time is really interesting, I think.
Yeah. I've listened to lots to. I listen to the Russell Brand podcasts.
Yes, yeah.
Beneath the Skin, fantastic, really, really interesting.
Oh,
he's done a few that are related specifically to the lockdown situation.
Yeah.
But I find him very stimulating, and the guests that he has, just fantastic insights into different ways of thinking.
Another good recommendation for us to drop under this video when we get it on.